Hello! I'm Elaine, and I'm a tour guide in the French Quarter. I do ghost tours. And I am not going to tell you the stories that I tell on my tour, because you gotta pay for those. But if you want to hear some interesting things that have happened to me while I'm leading random drunk people around the French Quarter, I got you. I actually hadn't thought of this story for a while, but a couple of my guests on one of my tours mentioned something that brought it up, and it just popped back into my head. But once in a blue moon, especially on the true crime murder tour, you'll get a guest that you're pretty sure is going to be a serial killer at some point. For example, tonight I had a couple that were very sweet, except for the fact that the man he wouldn't stop touching the woman, and not in the way that, like, usually that is. Like, he wasn't, like, grabbing her tits. He wasn't, like, holding her butt. He wasn't doing that awkward thing where guys stand behind the girl and put their hands in the girl's front pocket so that they are in as much physical contact as humanly possible. No, he'd just have, like, one hand wrapped around her shoulder, which is fine and normal, except the actual hand would be around her neck or holding the side of her face, and it was just a bit off, just ever so slightly off. But the story that I really wanted to tell was there was one night I had a group on the Killers and Thrillers tour, the violent true crime tour. And objectively, the kid was probably too young to be on the tour. Like, this tour is 16 up, and I'm guessing he was probably about 14, but that happens a lot on that tour, and as long as they can pass for the right age, I am perfectly happy with ignoring it. And also, to make it even better, that night, it was literally just him and his parents, so it's not like I'm going to kick him off the tour. So I start the tour, and I noticed that he's one of those kids that is pretty common for teenage boys, does not want to talk to me, does not want to respond to me, doesn't seem to want to respond to his parents. He just sort of stares. And I assume he doesn't really want to be here, but, whatever. But the weird thing is, his mom actually mentions in passing that they're taking the tour because he's the one that chose it. And I'm like, okay, whatevs. And, like, I'm talking to the parents, and it's fine, and the parents will occasionally try to get the son to come join in, and he just won't say anything. And, like, by halfway through the tour, I was starting to get really uncomfortable because he also had a really intense stare. Like, he made direct eye contact with me the entire time. And it just felt like he wasn't blinking enough to be normal. And I'm just sort of like, okay, this is getting a bit weird. But then he actually speaks to me for the very first time on the tour. And it was after I told a story of a young couple that the guy killed the girl and chopped her to pieces. And there were rumors tied to that story involving cannibalism, even though the police say there was no cannibalism in this case. And I told him the story and asked if there were any questions. And this guy just slowly raises his hand while making aggressive eye contact with me and asks, "What do you think human flesh tastes like?" And keep in mind, this is the first word that kid has said to me all night. And I'm just sort of like, I think it tastes like therapy. Therapy is what I think it tastes like. You should try some. Therapy is great. But throughout the rest of the night, yeah, he'd just be completely silent. And then out of the blue, ask these questions that just sent a chill down my spine. We were talking about a story that it is like made up, and I tell people on the tour that it's probably made up, about a Turkish sultan that was buried alive in one of the French Quarter courtyards. And he asked me the question, how long do you think it took him to die? And I'm just sitting here like, I don't know, leave me alone. And finally, I'm getting near the end of this tour, and at this point I am rushing to get done as soon as humanly possible, because I do not want to be here anymore. And I finished that tour with the La Laurie Mansion, as I often do, talking about enslavement, and this kid is laughing at all the worst possible moments. And like, we get a lot of awkward laughter, like when you're so uncomfortable that you just laugh, and like, that's noticeable. You can tell what it is. And this kid was just chuckling as if he had heard a good joke, and I'm just sort of like, I want to go home. And I finish, and the mom is like, oh, thank you, that was lovely, that was wonderful, like, we've had a great time, little Timmy or whatever his name was really enjoyed himself, here's your tip, and we liked it so much, would you like to go out and get a drink with us before we go back to the hotel? And I'm like, no, abso-fucking-lutely not.
Don't forget to like and subscribe, and feel free to share your own experiences in the comments below.